things are just like different now.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess that's where we should start. Is like, I've known you since 2019, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I feel like over the past year, now that things have been opened up more with COVID and regular things are happening, we haven't been able to find time to just like kick it.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard.
Like the old days. Yeah. And so it's good to have you back, man. What's been going on with you?
Yeah, I think that, not to immediately trash everything you just said, I think one of the wild things is, specifically from like where I'm at with my career and school and everything, I've seen your growth over like since the first time I was on till now is like astronomical. Like you have tons of guests from all over the world talking to like such interesting people. And like that's super inspiring and interesting to watch, like the growth of a creator and stuff like that. For me, it's just the changing of degrees of where I'm at with school. So when I was on for the first time, I was still doing coursework for my degree. I was taking classes, I was teaching on at UIC. The last time we had spoke, I was just about to defend my prospectus, which is like the key to get like that ABD status where you're like considered a historian, but you just have to do the dissertation.
Okay.
ABD just means all but dissertations. You finished everything else. You're there.
Oh, okay. All these acronyms.
Yeah, I know. There's too many.
All these acronyms in academia.
And so we talked right before I defended that, and now I'm at this point where it's been a year, still grinding away on the dissertation, still trying to do travel if I can, but I'm still in that world of school. School has changed, but it's still school, where I've seen the degrees and the levels that you've jumped through, and I think that that's been really exciting and awesome to watch as someone who's been on the podcast for a while. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, how would you say, I guess you sort of answered this, but like, how would you say you've grown or life has changed for you? And then I was curious, like, your external perspective of like me. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like totally blind to it.
Yeah. I think it's a lot easier to have someone tell you how they have seen you change. Because to talk about myself, like that's hard. Like I feel the same as I did yesterday and the day before. Like, I will say that I've become much more comfortable. I've always thought that I was like a good teacher, but I feel like I've really found my niche and found like a pattern where I feel super comfortable in the classroom with my students. And now that I'm going into my 5th year at UIC, I've been able to see students that I taught when they were freshmen graduate and send me emails and tell me that they're off going to grad school or going to med school. And that's been super exciting and like kind of a little bit of insight to know that, okay, yeah, the work I am doing, it is impacting students' lives. It does matter. Whereas like in the very beginning, when I first started to come on the podcast, I didn't know if that was the case. They said I was a good teacher and TA for them, but it's hard to really like judge that. I will say that I think with anything, research-wise and writing-wise, just constantly trying to improve and perfect a craft that I've been working on for over a decade at this point. And I think that's like probably the biggest change. It's very slow, small, gradual change. And to contrast that with what I've seen from you, when I first met you, the podcast hadn't existed yet. You were doing a lot of writing, and we were talking a lot about history, and we're just kind of picking each other's brains. And then I saw this like passion ignite, and it's been shocking to see someone grow the way that you have grown as a content creator, and as someone, how much you've read and how much you've like expanded your brain and your thought process and your interests. I think that's really rare in a lot of people. So that's been really exciting to see and watch. And I think the podcast in general, right? Like, I remember in the very beginning, you're getting your feet wet, trying to figure out what worked, what didn't work. And I love a lot of those early episodes. A lot of our friends, local people we know from work, people we know from just our lives, are on those early episodes. However, to see us get to a point now where you're talking to people in Brazil and in France and all over the world, like, in such a short amount of time, I never anticipated that you would make such large steps. So that's been, like, very incredible to observe as, like, an outside person.
Yeah. And, like, I feel like over this course of time, I've learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
And those that have listened to this podcast and watched these videos, like, they know kind of the morning routine I have and just, like, kind of how I go about things. But also to, like, be objective about your own self.
Right.
And, like, also, like, notice what you're good at and also what you're not good at.
Right.
Or areas of improvement and,
Right.
and things like that. And, like, something which people might find ironic, but I don't open up a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just do my thing. I don't really talk much. I just do my work, which is like what I've seen my dad do as a farmer and
Right.
just like working for the county. You just like, you grind and you do your thing. But like, you're one of the people I would say that I feel, or I have felt comfortable like opening up to. Like, while we might not over the last year or so had these hour-long conversations or like in my backyard for hanging out for 4 hours,
Right.
drinking bourbon, just talking about life. We haven't had as many of those lengthwise, but we've had these like little short bursts of like 5 to 10 minutes when we're like passing each other at the bar.
Yeah.
And I'm like expressing to you some wild stuff that's happening that I don't feel comfortable telling other people, which I think speaks to the relationship.
First of all, cheers to that. And I think that that's a sign of a good friend, right? And I've always talked about how I'm very introverted, so it's like hard for me to be super social in a lot of ways. And I can do it. I work at a bar. I have to do it, but it's very exhausting. And with you, it's always so easy. And if we don't talk to each other for 3 months, and then you drop an idea on me, we can sit at the bar and talk for an hour about it. And it just feels very natural and easy. And I think that that's been something, again, as like this observer of it, being able to like watch you grow and then also know that like we can always fall back into this has been rewarding and fun. I'm glad that I've been able to make friends like this at Station. So
yeah, it's pretty great. It's starting to rain a little bit, but I think we should keep pushing.
I agree.
See how waterproof these iPhones are.
It did say it was looking like it might pass, so we could be okay. Lastly, on that point, I know a few months back we had talked, and I had kind of like broached this idea of you should have some of your guests ask you questions, and I think that that's a really good idea. Not to like humble brag myself here, but like I do know you as a person, and I do know that sometimes you like being the microphone in the conversations and learning and like taking in the information, but I don't always see you feeling as comfortable to like really open up and make yourself vulnerable and put yourself into those positions. I think that the questions that guests have been able to ask you since we talked about that allows you to take some time, really think about it, and then be open and honest with yourself and with the podcast and like present those ideas and some things that you might not bring up in a normal conversation, but someone else might ask you about. And I think that it's brought you to life more in the podcast rather than it being something where it's more of like an interview. It's people are able to see both the guests and get a little bit more of an idea of who you, Rich, are. So
yeah, props to you on that. That has been like a great thing, and for me, I have fun doing it. Dave,
chock full of great ideas, by the way.
He's full of great ideas, and he's the pioneer, or the idea man behind the Rich Answers, where every Monday we take questions from past podcast guests, and I like we do it that way too, because it limits like who's able to ask these questions.
Right.
Because when I have people on, there is a filter. Like I go through hundreds of people.
Right.
Of who could potentially be on, with a business partner that I have who helps me find these people. So they're filtered as like, one, who I would be friends with, and two, like, are they thoughtful and like
right.
introspective about life in a way. It's been fun, and it's been fun to like. That's something I've been excited for with summer.
Yeah.
Is now it's warmer and I can do more recording outside as
Right.
we are right now. Props to you for that idea.
I think what was why I brought that up was it started to get to a point where you were talking to like such a radical range of different people from different backgrounds, different life experiences, from people who were doing like urban farming in the city to like theoretical scientists in France. And I was like, I just want to hear what those people would ask you and like how different those questions are. And like sometimes they're goofy and they're funny, and sometimes they get a little bit more serious and they like actually prompt you to think. And like I remember when you were talking to like the NASA scientist, or she works at NASA, like those were sweet, really great, fun, good questions that I don't know if I would have thought like they didn't even necessarily have to deal with like space and NASA, but it allowed you to have a little bit more of that like personable conversation with someone and like think about how you would respond to them and how they would like think about your brain. And I think it was like a really interesting way to kind of get into the heart and mind of Rich.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cheers to you. Rich answers.
Love it.